Oh, crap.
Well, it wasn't. They were on the. It was turned the other way.
Oh, really? So they flipped it over?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So they were painting, I guess, and then there were too many bees, I guess. You know, and then they looked into it and found that.
Yeah. Okay. Not allowed to say where I'm at, but this nest is massive, and I'm out in the middle of nowhere. So, oh my God, look at that thing. Look at that freaking thing. It is just huge. So, there's no electricity back here. So, I have to use a generator. Let me show you the generator that I got. It's actually an inverter generator. So it's quiet, so I can do my videos and not. So I got this inverter here, so I can start this up on the back side of whatever this is, and I'll even say what it is. And so that way I can have electricity but not be super loud with like a regular generator. So I'm gonna get started. And excitingly enough, I brought Big Bertha. Rest in peace, shop vac. Can't really see what's in there, but you'll be able to see the swarming, I guess. Little mole in there. I'm inside the box here. This thing is freaking huge. Oh my God. They're already coming at me because the light's on. I'm trying not to vibrate this thing too much, but it's kind of hard not to. It's made out of wood. I'm just going to sit down here and just vacuum off as much as I can. So this is a German yellowjacket colony that built its nest inside of this box. This nest was absolutely massive. I call this a super nest. However, when this nest was actually in development, the box was orientated on its right side. So the right side of this nest actually used to be the bottom of the nest. But at one point during the development of the colony, the client had actually had a closed cab lift and had turned this box over on its opposite side, unbeknownst to them that there was a nest inside of it. And since it was a closed cab, he was apparently the lift was being swarmed, but he wasn't being attacked, luckily. And so later on, they had moved the box even a second time and moved it down towards the edge of this woods, and where it's sitting now. And they had, I guess, the Yellow Jackets were swarming that lift as well while they were moving it. And then they realized that this thing was actually a lot bigger than they thought, and they called me to come and remove it. So this was out in the middle of nowhere. This field, there's like 50 some acres here, and this field was just, I mean, literally, I drove on a dirt road to get to it. But there was a bunch of events that were going to be coming up, and they could not have these Yellow Jackets in this box. Once the event started, there's going to be thousands of people here. So they needed me to come and remove it. Well, again, it's out in the middle of nowhere, so I had to have a way to use my vacuum. The very first clip at the beginning of this video was actually the first day that I came here to remove the nest. I didn't know how big it was. And peering at it, I realized I was going to have to vacuum everybody up. I couldn't just try to bag it and get it out of there. There was probably at least 3,500 to 4,000 yellow jackets inside this colony. And just bagging it, there was going to be a lot left over that were going to be inside this box, you know, looking for the nest and probably even starting to rebuild. So I came back the next day with my vacuum and a generator, or a generator inverter, to vacuum up as much of the yellow jackets as possible, so that way there wasn't any instances of anybody getting stung when the event started. So I spent a lot of time here vacuuming up. I actually cut out quite a bit of this removal. It's actually a pretty long removal video, but considering the amount of content I actually cut out of it, to shrink it down to under 20 minutes was pretty substantial. There were so many yellow jackets coming back while I was removing this that I literally sat here and just sucked up a lot of the foragers returning without even touching the nest. I knew the second I would open up this nest that there was going to be a lot of yellow jackets flying out and flying around and adding to the numbers. Because you see here, there's already pouring out just from me poking the envelope. And that was after I'd already been here for like 20 minutes vacuuming the foragers. So I knew that this was going to be a pretty involved job, and matter of fact, I think I had like 4 removals for this day, and I had to cancel 2 of them because I was so behind by the time I was done this thing. So I just literally just started poking into the envelope, and there were probably 10 to 13 layers of envelope even before getting to the comb. And just as soon as I actually got to the comb, I could see that the mass amount of numbers inside of here was a little bit bigger than I thought it was. So my vacuum, luckily I brought Big Bertha, which is my taller, I think it's like a 7 gallon vacuum, and I was glad that I brought that one along, because my other one I'd had to have dumped it out at least twice in between, once I started breaking into the envelope. So usually what I do is suck up a lot of the envelope with the vacuum, but in this case I just kind of knocked a lot of it off, and then I figured I actually had to bag it up separate from the comb because there was so much of it involved. I had my pry bar here to break out the envelope, and that's just really because it's a nice flat, like almost like a blade, and it kind of pierces right through the envelope. And I didn't want to I really didn't want to rip into the, I didn't want to rip the envelope into shreds. I kind of wanted to keep it in one big whole piece because I wanted to show it at the end. Well, unfortunately, I had it all bagged up, and I had it in my driveway, and I left it out until like 9 o'clock that evening, and a skunk and actually a few skunks tore into the bag and ripped the whole thing to shreds looking for larvae and eating the yellow jackets. By the next morning, there was nothing left of this nest, like as far as the envelope was concerned. There was some comb left over because I put that in the refrigerator, but the envelope itself was completely torn apart, so I wasn't able to show anybody the cool like girth of this thing. Roughly, this thing was about the size of like maybe 2 beach balls side by side if you were to have that much girth. It was just absolutely massive. The actual adult count, the individual count, was probably about 3,500 to 4,000 adults. There's probably about 6 layers of comb, and they were substantial in diameter. I think like 18 inches in diameter, maybe even a little bit bigger in some spots. Just chock completely full with larvae. So just circumcising the nest here with the pry bar, just trying to separate the envelope from the comb itself so I could just pull it down in one piece. So there's actually 2 different types of German yellow jackets, and they're 2 different suborders, and they pretty much do the same thing, but only one species is a little bit more aggressive than the other. This species that I'm dealing with here is actually the more aggressive German yellow jacket species, and they were clinging and they were dive bombing, they were shooting venom. It was a little unnerving at first because there were so many flying out at one time. And I didn't get stung or anything, but it makes you second guess exactly what you're doing and making sure you're double checking your zippers and your gloves and everything else. The spots that I get stung on the most, if I do get stung, it's on my wrists. The suit itself has sleeves that go up to my, like right at my palm, and then the glove itself has long sleeves that go over top of that, so you get double layer on your arm. However, when you're reaching into a space, the suit sleeve rolls up a little bit, so it exposes your wrist underneath of the glove sleeve. And the glove sleeve is like a canvasy type material, but it isn't thick enough that if you get it pressed against your arm or if it gets a little bit wet, it allows the stinger to get through and get you on the wrist. But look at this. As I'm pulling this envelope off, you see just the girth of that thing. I mean, it even had some weight to it. And all it is paper. Like, that's it. But you can see here how the comb actually have two different orientations. You have the main patties that are stuck to the piece of wood that are perpendicular to the ground. And then there's these offshoots of comb that are parallel to the ground. So that just shows you how the orientation initially was, and then over time that the box was moved over and moved vertical, and those comb then were being continued to build the proper orientation to the ground. So that doesn't really affect the production, and the larvae can still produce and develop, even though they are not in the exact orientation. But they do prefer to have the comb facing directly downwards when they build. So at this point, I did just want to try to get the comb off as soon as I could. I didn't want to break the comb apart because I knew there was a lot of adults in between the layers, and that's typical with any removal that I do, whether that's inside, outside, whatever. Ground nest, cavity nest, aerial nest, it doesn't make a difference. I like to try to keep the combs intact, so that way, if I were to break them apart, there's a lot of individuals in between, and they would be coming out in a hurry, and that'd be just more that I have to vacuum up. So I prefer to keep the comb, the main structure of the comb, intact. So I did spend some time, even further yet, just vacuuming up a lot of the foragers that were coming back. If there's comb there, the foragers are going to go right back to the comb. If I remove the comb, they'll kind of crawl around in the general vicinity, but they won't stay in the original spot. So I have to kind of like spend a little bit more time going all around inside the space. But I did end up just pulling the comb down and bagging it up pretty quick. And you can see the fury that released. The second that I pulled that off, there were so many underneath those layers of comb. And then just putting it here in the bag, you see the girth of that thing. I mean, like 18 to 20 inches at the widest diameter, which is really impressive for a German yellow jacket nest. So the rest of this part of the removal is just vacuuming up all the foragers and sucking up all the envelope off this piece of wood, and then bagging up the rest of the main chunk of envelope here. Look at the girth of that thing. That is just massive. It was like taller than my torso. It's wild. So now that all the envelope and the comb are pretty much bagged up, vacuuming up the rest of the individuals becomes a little bit tedious because when they fly in, they don't see the nest, so they kind of just crawl on anywhere in that vicinity, and the vacuuming that with a nozzle that's circular and smaller, and you're just going over all of this wood, and it just takes forever because they will clump, but they clump like further up into the box. So I have to just like wait there for them to consolidate, and then I go back and strike them with the wand and suck them up. People often ask why I don't use a wide nozzle on my vacuum or an attachment or whatever. I hear that millions of times in the comments. And the reason why I don't use that is because, so if you were to put an attachment on the vacuum nozzle itself, it does not change the angle of suction. So even though it's a quote-unquote wide angle nozzle, it doesn't mean that there's a wide angle of suction and where it would actually suck up more yellow jackets. If I don't put any attachment on it at all, if I leave it just a cylindrical extension wand, that nozzle is going to have the most suctions on center, and that's going to give me the most power that I can get to suck up the nest.
All right, it's inside the vacuum. Let's go dump it out.
All of that sludge, all I put inside this vacuum is soapy water, and sometimes not even soapy water. Sometimes it's just water. And what that does is when you suck up the yellow jackets, they hit the baffle inside of there, and the centrifugal force forces them down inside the water, and they drown. If they don't die from the blunt force trauma of hitting the baffle, they die pretty quick afterwards, hitting the water or the soapy water. It's not an instant death, but it is a pretty fast death.
Birdies. Naughty birdie. That's what you get. That's what you get. Hey, good birdies. There you go, birdie. You finally made it in. Here. Here. Beep, beep. I'm gonna see a queen in here somewhere. Hey, good birdies. Oh, giblet. What a nice giblet. What a nice birdie. What a nice birdie. Hi, honey. Got a lot of males. There's a male. Oh, it's a nice birdie. A nice birdie. Hello, honey. Hi, honey.